Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be discussing one of my most anticipated movies of this entire year. And I don't mean like just the rest of 2025, I mean the entire year. So back in 2022, I saw this little movie called The Black Phone. And I knew nothing about that movie going in, other than it was being directed by Scott Derrickson, who most people know from Sinister fame. And then you had the story was based on a short story written by Joe Hill, which is, of course, Stephen King's son. So those two things there were enough to get my foot in the door, to get me a little excited for the movie, even though I didn't really know the premise. And I am one of the people that ended up walking out of that movie just in love with it. I I pretty much liked every facet of what they were doing, with maybe one or two slight flaws. I think that movie wrapped up perfectly, and it probably didn't need a sequel. So when I heard about this one, I was scared. I'm gonna be honest. I was a little bit scared because I just thought that first one was such a perfect little self-contained story, like a grounded story with some paranormal elements sprinkled in there, but a grounded type of movie. And when I saw the trailers for this one, obviously, first thing that has to be said, everybody's been saying it, but I definitely saw like the Freddy Krueger influence that they were going with here. Wasn't exactly mad at that direction, but again, I thought it just worked so well as a one and done. And that was one of my favorite things about The Black Phone, is just how wholly original that felt. Like, it didn't feel like it was borrowing from a bunch of other horror movies. It felt like its own thing, and I really dug it. You know, and then you get to The Black Phone 2, and I'm gonna talk all about it, but as far as borrowing from other franchises, I can see a lot of that in here. Like when you get the kids at a campground as counselors near a lake, obviously that's giving you like sleepaway camp, that's giving you Friday the 13th. When you have the grabber who comes back in a character's dreams and attacks her while she's sleeping, obviously that has Freddy Krueger written all over it. And then I also felt like there were a couple elements that felt very Conjuring, and then a little bit Doctor Sleep near the end of the movie, which I won't spoil for you. So this movie already, to me, didn't succeed in the same way the first one did, where the first one was so original. This one feels like it's borrowing from a ton of other well-established horror franchises and like mashing them into one movie. And you know, with that, I just felt like The Black Phone 2 lost some of its originality, it lost some of its identity, which is what I dug so much about that first movie. As far as the positives, I mean, guys, there is a lot I like about the movie. Spoiler, I still will be giving this a positive score. Namely, Mason Thames as Finney, Madison McGraw as Gwen. Again, just like the first movie, they are fantastic. Maybe even better this time around. Both of them getting a little bit older, maybe showing a little more emotional range. Finney was great. Gwen, other than some dialogue that we'll get to very shortly, the actress herself, man, she's phenomenal. Like, she is one to look out for. Definitely, she becomes the main character more in this movie, and she steals the show, I think, the entire time. Beyond those two, I really like how we further explored the dad's trauma with losing his wife and, you know, his reliance on alcohol. I like how they naturally evolved his character. That felt good, although I wish we would have had a little more of his character in this movie, because I really did enjoy him. But also, the setting, the atmosphere, great cinematography in this movie. Like, there are some beautiful camera shots here. And then they did bring it with the gore, but in a way that it still felt unsatisfying, but in a way that I can't say in a spoiler-free review. But I will say, there's a few moments in here where they definitely go for it. They don't hold back, they don't cut the camera away from certain, maybe uncomfortable moments, but there's a way they handle it in the movie that it still felt cheapened. But again, I can't really say why. And on the note of the cinematography, hands down the best shot in this movie, which I'll try to include a clip of because it's in the trailer, so it's not really spoiling anything, although I will say I wish I didn't see that trailer shot, because it would have been that much better in the movie. But the best shot in this movie is when Gwen is in one of her dream sequences, and just the way they play with light and shadows of just the grabber popping out of this dark corner, just like appearing to her, kind of give like a Michael Myers vibe coming up behind Laurie in the first Halloween. I thought that was super creative, and that was a badass shot. Also, I think the direction that they took Finney's character in this movie, I think it totally made sense for what he went through. You know, we're a couple years in the future here, so you are seeing a lot of his trauma, a lot of his PTSD after escaping the grabber, surviving the grabber. Kid's smoking a lot of weed. He's pretty much just trying to numb himself. You know, he doesn't want to feel anything because he's constantly angry, he's constantly scared, but he doesn't want to deal with those emotions. So he smokes a lot of weed to kind of blank his mind a little bit. His character development and where we see him at the beginning of this movie totally made sense to me. I really like that. And on top of that, he's also just like getting in a ton of fights in school now because, well, first of all, Robin taught him to fight in the first movie, but he's getting in a lot of fights because everybody now knows him. He has this reputation of being the kid who survived the grabber. You know, so he has built this reputation of kind of a badass. So he's smoking a lot of weed, trying to numb his emotions. He's getting in fights in school, and it made a lot of sense to me. We deal with his trauma here, but not overly so. You know, it's not like movies. This isn't just a whole long 2-hour A24 production about dealing with trauma. It's in there, but they don't like hit you over the head with it the entire movie, which I like. Sometimes that's a little bit much for me. And then, of course, finally, the grabber himself. I really enjoyed all of his moments. I really enjoyed all of his dialogue. All the dream sequences with him and Gwen were very well done, but you just don't get enough of him in this movie. First of all, I think they took way too long to introduce him into the story, other than like a quick like Finney seeing him in his mind for a second or two. Aside from that quick moment, the movie waited way too long. Like, this dude should have been in the movie from the get-go. And let's just say it takes a little while. But all of his stuff was great. Just really wanted to see more of him, man. I kind of feel like this movie forgets about the grabber in favor of like lifting these two kids up. And I do love them, you know, Finney and Gwen. I love the characters. But we have to also remember that the grabber is a big part of what made that first movie work. And they just kind of leave him on the back burner here to kind of let them shine. And I think the screen time should have been maybe a little more split. Now, as far as the story of the movie, that's probably where I take biggest issue, because this movie had one big mystery and one like big revelation that kind of ties the family back into the grabber. And to be honest, neither one worked that well for me. I feel like these are two big factors that's going to dictate how you feel about the movie. For me, I didn't love either one of them. The mystery, which of course I'm not going to reveal to you, but the mystery of the movie is kind of the entire through line of the first half, actually the entire movie. And by the time we reach the conclusion that we reach, it kind of felt like it was filler. Like, it just felt like the buildup for that, like what they were doing at the beginning with the etching the initials and the ice. I thought that was going to go somewhere deeper than the answer we got, which was just like, okay, yeah, cool. Like, why did we need these kids to tell her something that felt pretty obvious? And then, as I said, the big revelation of the movie is something that ties the Blake family to the grabber in a way that I just kind of felt was unnecessary and makes the world feel like somehow smaller, right? Because it's like now everything has to have a connecting thread. Like, instead of just random victims, instead of just random circumstance of the first movie, now it feels like maybe everything was done intentionally because this ties to this and this ties to this. And sometimes I just don't think you need an answer for everything. To me, this is like a perfect comparison. This is the classic Halloween 2 when we find out that Michael Myers is related to Laurie Strode, right?
Oh, here's a fun fact. You made out with your sister, man!
Shut up!
What made that first movie so terrifying, so great, is that there was no rhyme or reason to Michael Myers. He just killed at random. He was an opportunity killer. He did it just for the thrill of it, or because something was speaking to him, making him do it. But there was no ties. Like, he wasn't going for his sister to finish the family off. It was random. And I think that was a better approach here as well for the grabber, instead of tying it all around. But that's my opinion. Like I said, that's gonna work well for a lot of people. For me, I didn't love the choice. A choice that I very much did like was the choice to do the dream sequences in like this 8mm dirty, grainy film. They kind of did this in the first movie with the pictures of the grabber and the black balloons and stuff, but this movie chooses to utilize that every time that Gwen has like a dream sequence, I thought that was fucking killer. As somebody who loves 70s and 80s horror way more than modern horror because of that look, I really appreciated all of those sequences. But conversely, I'll also say, I do feel like the dream sequences in this movie are a little overdone. I think there's maybe one or two too many of them. Like it gets to a point where, oh, this is cool, I see what we're doing, and then it becomes like half of the runtime in this dream world. It felt a little rinse repeat to me, and at a certain point, I was kind of over it. What does help the dream sequences a little bit in the back half, what saves them a little bit, is this is where we start to involve the grabber in them. And this is where you get all of those heavily inspired Nightmare on Elm Street type dream sequences. I mean, there are moments in this movie where he's throwing Gwen around, where it's identical to Tina being tossed around in the first Nightmare. There's like the boiler in the background, which is, of course, an iconic set piece in the Nightmare on Elm Street universe. And then it also, by the end of this movie, it turns a little more Dream Warriors. So Scott Derrickson obviously loves Nightmare on Elm Street, and I could see people having an issue with that part of this movie. I could see where you're like, this is basically just a ripoff of Nightmare on Elm Street. And I wouldn't argue that, I don't blame you. That being said, those moments worked pretty well for me. Like, I don't think that idea has to be reserved just for Freddy Krueger. And I think they made the movie more exciting when we got those moments. It's also been about, what, 15 years since we've gotten anything Nightmare on Elm Street related, which I still don't understand. But it also has been 15 years, so it's very possible that I'm saying this out of somebody who's desperate for more Freddy Krueger stuff. Maybe if we were in the middle of like a Nightmare on Elm Street renaissance and there were a bunch of movies coming out with this, then it might be more of a negative for me where I'm like, yeah, that's a ripoff, we don't need that. But because I'm so starved, give me more of those dream sequences. And to go along with these nightmare sequences, another one of my biggest flaws with the movie is I think it is very confused with its own rules of the dream universe. Like there's no real rhyme or reason to how it works. Like things that are introduced at the beginning, when you finally start to be like, oh, okay, I think I see how this is. It's like, well, how the fuck did he just do that? So I think they don't really do a good job explaining rules. They don't establish the rules. And then when you start to figure them out a little bit, it feels like they break their own rules. Like this feels like Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, where everybody was pissed. Like, Freddy's not supposed to be able to do that. I kind of got the same feeling here. So I think that was very confusing. I think it wasn't well explained. And I think there's a way they could have explained it that it would have sat with me better, but because they didn't, that turned me off a little bit. Like I said, this movie is at times very dark, very brutal. It does not hold back on the death sequences, but I will say, I think the movie could have done with a higher body count. I think, especially, there's a few characters at the end, I wouldn't have mind seeing them go. But yeah, I could have done with a higher body count. And with that darkness, I think there is a nice comedic edge here that for the most part works. There were a couple moments that, with the tension there, just the release of tension with one line, really got some big laughs in my theater, especially like when Gwen is in bed with this love interest of hers, and Finney's kind of peeping in their conversation, and the kid says something about Gwen being beautiful, and then you just hear Finney off camera. He's like, what about me? Am I beautiful? Great moment. That got a ton of laughs. So I think for the most part, the comedy works. But where the comedy didn't work for me as much, as I briefly mentioned earlier, is a lot of Gwen's dialogue. Just in general, this movie has a lot of cheese in it, a lot of, dare I say, cringe-inducing lines, and I think, at times, Gwen's was the worst of it. It's not Madeline McGraw's fault. I don't think any actor or actress could save some of these lines. You remember how in the first movie, like, she comes up with these creative insults to call the kids that are bullying Finney, or the principal of the school? They do that again here, but for whatever reason, they were not landing. Maybe it's just the lines weren't as good. Maybe now that she's older, it's not as cute hearing like a 16, 15-year-old girl say it as like a little tiny girl where it was hilarious. And also, like when they're directed at the grabber, they don't land for me that great. Like there's one moment where she's on the phone with him, and she says something along the lines of like, get fucked with a dino dick. What the fuck is that? And that's kind of like half of her dialogue in this movie. So I think they tried way too hard with the insults here. Didn't work for me nearly as well as the first one. So yeah, I just think like between Gwen's dialogue and the dialogue in the movie in general, like there are some good emotional moments, especially when they speak with their dad and Finney admits like how scared and how angry he is all the time. That is definitely Mason Thames' time to shine. Madeline McGraw has plenty of moments where you really see what a great actress she is. And it's like, damn it, if they just could have written better dialogue for her throughout the movie, it would have been that much better for it. So there are some great moments of dialogue, but there's a lot of cheese that just kind of had me shrinking in my seat, kind of had me want to like go back in my seat and hide my face because it was like very cringe-inducing. So I think some of the bad dialogue, the non-clear rules of the dream world, the lack of the grabber, and the story beats for me, just all of those things combined, I think make this a movie that to me is kind of wasted potential. Like this movie could have been my favorite horror movie of the year. Like I see a world where I love this one just as much as the first, and it didn't quite live up to that. Yeah, guys, but I personally prefer the direction that first movie went, the direction they took with like the paranormal, the supernatural elements, you know, where they're still very much in that movie, but they're kind of sprinkled in there in an otherwise grounded film. This time around, they took those trace elements of like the paranormal supernatural, and they went all in on it. Like they pushed all their chips, they said, let's make this entire movie that. And I could see how it's going to work for a ton of you. I could see why a lot of you would like it more than the first one. I'm not really going to argue, you know, because we all have our opinions. But I just preferred the originality and the just smaller scale nature of that first movie. Do I think we needed a sequel? I'm gonna have to say no. So yes, I was extremely disappointed for one of my most anticipated movies of this entire year, but overall, still a solid follow-up. Where I gave the first Black Phone an 8 out of 10 a couple years ago, I unfortunately have to give this one a 6.5 out of 10, and it absolutely crushes me to have to say that. Alright guys, but that is going to do it for this one. As always, drop your comments down below if you've seen this movie. Let me know what you thought. I am super eager to hear your thoughts here, because I am seeing more people seem to kind of lean into the second one more than the first one. I think Cody said this, Cody Leach, but it is true. It seems like people that really love that first movie are a little bit down on this one, and then vice versa. People that weren't huge on the first Black Phone love the more over-the-top nature in here. So drop your comments, let me know what you thought of this movie. Please, I want to have some friendly debates, all right, let's be respectful, but I want to have some debates in the comments. I want to hear all your thoughts. And on top of that, guys, if you enjoy videos like this, if you like reviews, rankings, tier lists, live streams, you know, do the YouTube stuff. Help this channel grow so we can keep doing this. Leave a thumbs up on the video. Like I said, drop your comments down below. Let me know what you thought of the Black Phone 2, and subscribe somewhere probably like here-ish. And as always, we will see you in the next one.